while we're in paring mode and not using a mallet, there's a couple other things we want to do with this block. The first thing we want to do is scribe a line about 1/8 of an inch off the edge and the face of that board. I'm going to just extend this one down. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to run that same 1/8 inch down and right around my curve, flip it around. Learning how to use your finger like this is really a pretty good skill to learn. So what I want to do is I've got that now marked out on this end, this edge, and that end. We're going to leave this edge of our block square. And what I want to do is clamp this right into the vise, and then I'm going to show you how we're going to put a little chamfer around there. We want that chamfer to come up into this corner, out and around, all the way around the entire 3 sides of this block. And I'm going to show you another chiseling method that is going to create a slicing cut so that you actually don't have to worry about grain direction too much. I'm going to go to a really wide chisel so that you can actually see this slicing motion in action. And I'm going to start on this end grain, and I'm going to come right into this corner, and I'm going to try and do this backwards. And the idea is, because this is end grain, we could literally just set the chisel at 90 degrees to the piece and come in. But sometimes on end grain, it's going to snag and crumble and those kind of things. So what I want to teach you is a slicing cut. And so I want to come in, I have my chisel at about a 45-degree angle to the board. And what I want to do literally is just start at one side of my chisel and work my way across. And you can see I'm actually just pulling a nice, even, curled shaving right off of there. And what you're going to see is I'm leaving behind, you can see I'm taking that nice curl shaving, and I'm leaving behind an absolutely perfectly smooth surface. So now I'm just going to go back for a second cut, take it a little deeper. You will find that this slicing action that I'm doing right now is probably one of the most valuable skills you can learn. If you can figure out how to make it slice across the grain, and again, you can see I'm starting at one end of the chisel and I'm just slicing that tiny little curl right off of there, okay? When it's doing that, you are in control of the chisel and you're gonna leave behind an absolutely smooth surface the entire time. So we're going to try that up here. I'm going to start by taking a slicing cut down into that corner, and you can see it's looking fairly good. It's got that really nice mitered look to it. And that's what I'm shooting for, is I want to get right into that corner. And you can see I'm taking very nice light shavings, and I'm walking away with those same kind of curls that I had across that end grain. And I want to make sure that my bevel or my chamfer that I'm putting on my board here is fairly uniform all the way around. So I want to just get rid of my pencil line. I'm going to come back in here and touch this up a little because that one, middle section, is looking a little small. Now, on a lot of tenons, you're going to see that chamfer that runs around the end. We can do that same practice that same slicing cut right there on that end. And I'm going to start sort of in the middle of my chisel. And if you watch, as I come across there, I'm ending up just beyond, just short of actually running out on the chisel. So then I'll come back and do this side. And right across the back. And right across this end. And I need very, very little forward pressure with my right hand. The only thing I need is the weight of the chisel and that slicing motion, and I'm going to slice right through it. I'm going to do this exact same thing on this end, and we're going to modify this once we get the rest of this piece chamfered up. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is take that noisy vise in one more time. Look at my grain direction on my sides, and it looks like I need to go from here to there. And I'm just going to take real light passes. You can see I'm still using that slicing motion. And what I'm also doing is I'm using the back of the chisel as a guide. So once I've started the cut, I'm really leaning on the back of the chisel. To get a nice straight line. Readjust, and now I want to take that bevel right up and around that corner and right off that end. So I'm going to go right back to my shear cut, my slicing cut there, come up and around, keep everything nice and smooth. You can see I'm getting close to that end. Now pay close attention to this. I'm going to go right out off the end of that board, and because I've got my chisel at about a 45-degree angle to the edge of my board, I can cut out there and I don't blow out the end grain. All right, go back in and touch up those little facets on my bevel around there. Perfect. So that, in a nutshell, is the slicing action. You want to try and get that down. Sometimes when I'm slicing, I'll actually use my thumb as a fulcrum and lever the handle around on my chisel to get that slicing action going. Now, I said we were going to modify this end. One of the things that I want to do is, now that I've got that 45 on there, I want to go back and I want to knock off those two corners, and I want to make that, just the end of that, into a quarter round. I'm going to go back in, I'm going to tip up, keep that same slicing action going, knock off one corner, knock off the other corner, now I'll knock off all those tiny little flats that I just created and make it round. And again, it's just, you can see I'm actually using my thumb on my right hand and sort of pushing down with it. I'm using it sort of like a fulcrum, and I'm getting that slicing action and just working this into a nice, steady little round. All right. Just took a couple of hold fasts and some scraps, locked my block in nice and tight. And what I want to do is I want to measure about 1 inch off this end, and then I'm going to measure over 2.5 inches. And what we're going to try and do here is we're going to chop this out as though we've done a mortise, which was a completely captured sort of a box that we were cutting out here. So what we want to do now is pretend we're letting in a hinge, just a regular old butt hinge, gaining in a hinge. So we're going to mark that 2.5 inch mark, stretch a line across the back. So I've come in an inch off this end. My depth of my hinge is 1 inch, and the length of my hinge is 2.5. Now, I want to take my marking gauge and set that right at 1/8 of an inch. And scribe that along the edge so I know how far to go down into this board. And because I'm not getting any younger, I'm going to darken my line a little bit there so that I can see it. We want to try and keep, just like on our mortise, we want to try and keep those 3 side walls of the gain perfectly square and straight, and we want to be able to pare out that inside and make it nice and flat and straight as well. So the first thing I want to do is make my chop cuts. Step a little bit away from my line, square up my chisel, chop straight down, move over, chop straight down. I'm going to go to the wider chisel, take my line across the back, and I'm a little off my line there, but I can pare that in afterwards. And again, we're going to take a series of chop cuts. Let's go to a slightly wider one. There we go. These are not only relief cuts, they also help us maintain a constant depth. Because what I'm doing is I'm laying the edge of the chisel flat onto my board and then striking it, and hopefully I've got a relatively even pressured strike all the way across there. Now I want to pare, so I'm going to move back into that position where I've got my right hand on the chisel, my left hand is in the break position there. Actually, I'm going to have to flip over this, put my hand over top here. And what I'm going to do is put the edge right on there, and I'm just going to wiggle my hand left and right and try and follow the depth of those relief cuts. And you can see I can just pare right off here, and the material just sloughs off. Whenever you can, if you're working to create some kind of you're gaining out for a mortise or a hinge or something like that, try and go across the grain. You're going to get just a lot quicker results. So now I'm going to walk my way around the hinge gain one more time. I'll go across that back. Again, being careful on my long grain chop cuts so that I don't split the edge off the board. Go back and make a few relief cuts. And now I'm going to take even less this time. I'm going to just start to really pare this out, and I want to make sure that I'm staying parallel to the face of my board so that I don't end up with a hinge gain where I've got the leaf of my hinge diving into the back corner. Almost there. All right, you can still see I have just the tiniest little bit of those chop marks left. I'm starting to get out of it on this end. Let me go around the perimeter one time. Just a nice light cut. I don't want to go too deep because I'm right up against my marking gauge scribe line. And what we're going to do is do a little bit of that sort of shear or slicing cut across to start to smooth out that bottom a little bit. Now I'll go back to that back edge. I'm gonna just extend my chop cut slightly there and put it right on my pencil line and pare that straight down. Fairly easy stuff. Now we're on to, I've got a nice flat bottom there, nice square sides, and easily be able to put a hinge right in there with no trouble at all. So now we're on to the most fun part of this whole thing. I'm going to show you how to inlay a diamond.